The Council on Foreign Relations. Janet Napolitano reports to CFR on Stasi Snoop Network, aka the Fusion Centers. I need to explain something about what the CFR is here, first of all. And I need to do a show on this in the future on just the Council on Foreign Relations, because this is a part of the picture. But the Council on Foreign Relations it's probably one of the most powerful organizations in the country. It's not a corporation and it's not part of the government. It's an independent group of people. But what it is if you took, within the scope of America, 4,000 of the most elite, powerful people from every sector of society, education, religion, military, government, people from both parties, by the way, the media, entertainment, and so on, put them into a club. That's the CFR. And their basic stated mission is to facilitate America's entry into a one-world government. These are globalists, one-worlders. They want a one-world financial system, one-world government. Now, not everybody in the CFR understands this or is even on board with it. There's a wide variety of reasons why people join that organization. Some of them do it just to rub elbows with the elite, to advance their careers. They have alternative motives. Some of them are just invited to be a part of it and they don't even know what it is. So you can't just say everyone in the CFR is a monster, although you could say that a few of them at the top are. Nevertheless, Janet Napolitano goes to the CFR to report on Homeland Security. Okay? And how that Homeland Security will continue its agendas without any change from the Bush administration, and that they will continue to monitor unusual activity. Well, unusual activity is in the eye of the beholder. That can be just about anything. And keep in mind here in this article I'm looking at, it says, between 1950 and 1989, the Stasi employed a total of 274,000 persons in an effort to root out the class enemy. That is to say, anybody that opposed communism in East Germany. The Stasi had close to 500,000 informers, which approximated to about 5% of East Germany's population between the ages of 18 and 60. What they're looking to do here will dwarf this. As efficient as the Stasi was, they did not have the high-tech computerization and communication that we have today. Video cameras, everything, you name it. They did not have what they have now. What's being put in place now will rival this to a huge degree. And, the article goes on to mention some other historical facts here. In the case of the East German Stasi, only 7.7%, according to official figures, were coerced into cooperating with the Stasi. Most cooperated with the state because they were made to feel important or they were given social incentives. 7.7 were coerced. The vast majority did it freely. Why? Because you have sad, pathetic people that are made to feel important because the government cares about what they think, or you have people who are being bought off, paid off, or given social incentives. Hey, in an economy that is collapsing, where there's high unemployment, you don't think this is going to appeal to a lot of people, that morals will go out the window and people will begin to turn and do these kinds of things? Get to know your neighbors, folks. Be friends with your neighbors. Be friends with people in your community. Get to know the people around you, because it will be important. So that's a little about the CFR. There's another article here from the CFR's own website. I'm not spending too much time on this. It basically goes into what fusion centers are and so on and so forth. But the overall gist of the article is that they believe that fusion centers are good. We need them. It's important that we have intelligence-led policing, in their words, and to not only have, of course, the government involved, but the private sector as well. Interesting comment in the article by New Jersey Governor John Corzine, who concedes that the potential for conflict between intelligence gathering and citizens' rights does exist. He believes that can be avoided, but at the same time, if they're not managed well, yes, there is the potential for abuse, which I'm paraphrasing basically what he's saying here. So that's the CFR. And what I'd like to get into next now is just some articles to do with local fusion centers and some of the reports that they actually put out. Alrighty, just looking at some reports here. Here's one article from the News and Observer. Stimulus funds go to build North Carolina Fusion Center. North Carolina will build a $56 million emergency nerve center in West Raleigh to coordinate state's response to floods, hurricanes, terrorist attacks, and other disasters. This is mostly about $41 million of this is being funded by the feds. The rest is local money, I believe. And here's what just drives me nuts, folks. Is okay, here it says Governor Beverly Perdue said in a statement, "This project is a big win for North Carolina." Well, I guess for the construction workers it is, but is this going to be a big win for North Carolina if they start data mining on citizens and snooping around on spies and digging up all your personal information without warrants? Is that going to be a big win for North Carolina? I don't know, you tell me. This is a 237,000 square foot facility. This is huge. It will be the state command center where governors and state and federal disaster officials can oversee emergency and relief efforts. Well, if that's all they do is respond to relief efforts, then that's one thing, but that is yet to be seen. We'll see how this develops, and we'll see whether or not which way this thing goes. Another one here. Philadelphia plans street-level intelligence fusion center, Infowars.com. Homeland Security set aside $20 million for this security headquarters in South Philadelphia. The center specializes in gathering intelligence and sharing it with the CIA, the FBI, Department of Justice, the Pentagon, and state and local governments. So here's another article just confirming who is getting this information and who it's being shared with. Never mind, the CIA or the Pentagon have no business gathering intelligence on American citizens, period. Fusion centers also operate on tip lines or hotlines to solicit intelligence from public employees or the public in general. Keep in mind, under the Hitler's Third Reich, 80% of the tips that their secret police received came from the public. 80% of their actionable intelligence came from tips from the public. That is major. You think they want private agencies involved? You better believe it. So that's another one from Philadelphia. Oh, here it says, I like this. City council members in Philadelphia, however, are not concerned about the very serious threat to liberty and political expression posed by the fusion centers. It says here, I guess having a Homeland Security facility in your neighborhood makes you feel pretty safe, said Councilman Darrell Clark. Well, Darrell, if they're spying on you and gathering information on you personally, does that make you safe, Darrell? I'm sorry, I just can't stand some of this stuff. It just kind of drives me nuts. But anyway, now, some of these fusion centers themselves. Here's one report. The Virginia Fusion Center, 2009 Virginia Terrorism Threat Assessment. You can download this. And it basically goes into profiling a lot of different groups. Now, some of them you would expect and probably should be in here. Al-Qaeda, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood. You would expect them to be in here. But then they go on to identify things like lone wolf extremists, militia extremists, and so on, which in my opinion is quite questionable. Could some of these groups be extreme? Yeah, but I don't think it's fair to tar all of them with the same brush. I heard someone once say, we tend to judge groups by their most extreme elements. It's not a fair reflection of a lot of groups at large. So, anyway, this is one report, which, fortunately does not demonize, pro-lifers, Christians, or returning veterans. But here's one that is not so friendly. And see, like I said, they're all different. They don't all do the same thing. And they operate independently. This is a news report from Fox. FoxNews.com. Fusion centers expand criteria to identify militia members. This is from the Missouri Information Analysis Center, or MIAC, authors of the infamous MIAC report. And it goes on to talk about, well, people who are third-party candidates, such as Texas Representative Ron Paul, or people like Chuck Baldwin and former Georgia Representative Bob Barr are cited in the report. This report is even worse than the DHS report. They name names. If you're a Ron Paul supporter or a Ron Paul bumper sticker, you could be a terrorist. In fact, I've seen in the news where people have been pulled over for having those bumper stickers, and that was it. So this is the kind of harassment, intimidation that is already coming out of this kind of thing. And it goes on to say here, Michael German, who's actually a former FBI, is now the National Security Policy Council for the American Civil Liberties Union, said that their report really crosses the line. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of the ACLU, but I will give credit where credit is due here. So, well, how bad is this report? Why don't we look at it for ourselves? This is the Fox report. Here is the MIAC report. MIAC strategic report. It was put out in February of 2009. The modern militia movement. So, it gives a little history here, and then it goes into some different articles or different points in here that could be red flags for a terrorist. The Ammunition Accountability Act. If you don't like that, you could be a potential terrorist. If you don't like having to have serial numbers on every single bullet that you have, you might be a terrorist. If you're anticipating the economic collapse of the U.S. government, highlighted here, you could be a potential militia member or a terrorist. If you don't like the North American Union, yes, conspiracy theorists claim that Canada, United States, and Mexico are forming a North American Union. Well, this is just stupid because they already have. Security Prosperity Partnership Agreement formed in 2005. It was a secret treaty signed by President Bush of the United States, Prime Minister Martin of Canada, and President Fox of Mexico, secretly behind the backs of the American people and behind the backs of Congress back in March of 2005. Later it leaked out and they did a bunch of damage control on it and tried to smooth it out. But it's just a joke. I mean, it is our version of the European Union. Consolidation of North America and the watering down and elimination of our Constitution, you know. Hallelujah. So anyway, if you don't like that, you might be a terrorist. The Universal Services Program that Obama said where he wants, you know, a 1 million man army and wants, you know, a civilian defense force. If you don't like that, you might be a terrorist. Radio frequency identification, RFID technology, basically putting the chips into everything from your pets to products you buy to people. And if you don't like that, you might be a militia member or a terrorist. I mean, it just goes on and on here, folks. Oh yes, if you don't like the Federal Reserve Bank, the banksters who are pillaging us and our economy, if you don't like that, you could also be a terrorist. And here's something else that's disturbing. It says you are the enemy. Now keep in mind this is written for law enforcement. This wasn't meant for the public to see this. You are the enemy. When it says you, it says the police. So the police are being instilled with fear that, oh my God, there's all these people out there that think me, the average police officer, is the enemy, and I have to watch my back and be paranoid now. See, this is like psychological warfare, not just against the public, but against the police themselves, because now they're made to feel that there's this big mass of people out there that are just ready to get them, which is not the case at all. It's not the case at all. And not all police like this. In fact, most don't. This was actually leaked out by law enforcement people at the risk of losing their jobs. So I commend those people and I salute those people for doing that. Here's where it actually talks about where it names names. It says militia members most commonly associate with third-party political groups. It's not uncommon for militia members to display constitutional party, campaign for liberty, or libertarian material. These are usually people who support presidential candidates such as Ron Paul, Chuck Baldwin, or Bob Barr. So there you go. They're actually naming names in here. This is really disgusting. And they don't even apologize for this. They just say, hey, we're sorry, but it's no big deal. This isn't intelligence that we're actioning or taking action on. It's just information, that's all. But the fact is, they really shouldn't be gathering information on average citizens in the first place. Like I said, they're data mining innocent citizens. They are not investigating real crimes or terrorism. So that is the MIAC report. You can download this yourself. There's one more thing I want to cover, and that will be done. This just has to do with fusion centers in the media. The last thing I want to look at here is fusion centers in the media, and then I want to wrap it up. You don't get to hear a lot about this in the mainstream media. There's a little bit, but not a lot. A little bit more on the internet. But this is not something they really want the public to have a broad knowledge about. I'll tell you that right now. And here I'm going to tell you why. There's an article here, another one by Infowars.com. I just use them a lot because they have some of the best information. Censored Jesse Ventura show on FEMA cams survives on YouTube. Jesse Ventura, who was a former governor of Minnesota, a Navy SEAL, he's done a whole bunch of things, has a show called Conspiracy Theory, and the ratings are going through the roof. It airs on True TV, and they've done a number of different episodes on a number of different things. And the episodes that they have done have all aired, multiple times. But there's one episode they did on fusion centers and FEMA camps, which only aired once, and that was it. After that, it was pulled. And it came out later that Homeland Security was breathing down their necks and basically said, you better not play that again. We're warning you. Shut it down. And when you get that kind of heat from the government, I mean, so much for freedom of expression and freedom of political thought and the First Amendment. Forget it. If you're blowing the whistle on something the government's doing that's bad and they don't like it, they're going to shut you down. It doesn't matter. The rules are for you, not for them. And it did come out that Homeland Security leaned on these people and shut down that particular episode. I've seen it on YouTube, and it is amazing. It is mind-blowing. And I highly recommend that you watch it if you can, because it really goes into a lot of great detail on what these fusion centers are. But just a few excerpts from the show. Mike German, interviewed by Jesse Ventura, 16 years as an FBI special agent, FBI terrorism specialist. He was infiltrating terror cells and preventing acts of terror before 9/11, resigned after 9/11 because of agency foul-ups and abuses. He basically states the fusion centers, have been developed in such secrecy with no guidelines and no oversight, so the public has no way to hold these institutions accountable. Not very reassuring. We have another gentleman that was interviewed on that particular show, Lance Clem, Homeland Security spokesman, and I quote, each one, fusion centers that is managed separately. The federal government does not manage these operations. So there is no real oversight and no real accountability with these organizations. And the fact that Jesse Ventura could do a show on these things and then Homeland Security tells him to shut up and shut it down, quite frankly, I find that quite disturbing. If he was making all this up and it was just a silly show, do you think they'd care? Do you think they'd come and talk to him about it? I mean, think about it, really. So here's an example where they've been getting the word out about what these things are, and the government tells them to put a sock in it. So basically, just to recap, fusion centers are a nationwide network of communication or intelligence hubs, information sharing between all the different agencies of state, local law enforcement, and the federal government, and all the three-letter alphabet soup guys. They are not simply investigating terrorism or crimes, they are data mining and gathering information on all Americans. You are being investigated even though you are an innocent American citizen who hasn't been charged or is guilty of anything. They are amassing the data on you and almost all of us. Now, that doesn't mean we need to be scared or paranoid. We need to live our lives and not be paranoid about these things. We simply need to be informed and be aware that, you know what, yeah, they are doing this, but this is why, like I've said before, relationships with your neighbors are important. Relationships with the people in your schools and your churches are important. At work. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends, tell those around you so that you're not caught off guard by this kind of thing. Pray that these things don't turn into giant abuse centers. We don't want innocent civilians being profiled or snatched in the darkness of night or any of this kind of stuff. We do not want to see the rise of an East German Stasi type of operation like we did 50, 60 years ago in East Germany. We don't want that here. What's being built here mirrors what they did. and it's coming back to life here, and we really don't want that. So pray that these things get shut down. Pray that they don't turn into a massive form of abuse, and let's just make a point of standing up for our freedoms, our civil liberties, and for the Constitution of the United States. So thank you very much for joining me, and we'll see you next time.